From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 10 o'clock news.
Good evening and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. President-elect Joe Biden is vowing to use the Defense Production Act to speed up production of vaccines and protective gear after accusing the Trump administration of not moving fast enough. Meanwhile, Senate lawmakers are now locked in a battle over raising stimulus payments and handing President Trump his first veto override. Skylar Henry's on Capitol Hill with more tonight.
We have to anticipate that the infections over the holidays will produce soaring cases counts in January.
President-elect Joe Biden addressed the ongoing COVID crisis from Delaware.
The Trump administration's plan to distribute vaccines is falling behind. I've directed my team to prepare a much more aggressive effort.
In response, President Trump tweeted, "It's up to the states to distribute the vaccines once brought to the designated areas by the federal government."
I'm ready.
Earlier, Vice President-elect Kamala Harris and her husband Doug Emhoff received their first dose of the Moderna coronavirus vaccine.
It is relatively painless. It happens really quickly. It is safe.
The Senate is back in session one day after the House voted to increase stimulus payments and override the president's veto of the national defense bill.
Is there objection to the original?
I object.
Senate Democrats objected to the majority leader's motion to set up a veto override for Wednesday, likely pushing it to later this week.
Soon this important legislation will be passed into law.
Senator McConnell blocked the Democrats' attempt to bring up a vote on the House-passed Cash Act, which would give $2,000 stimulus checks to millions of Americans.
We should not adjourn until the Senate holds a vote on both measures.
Several Senate Republicans have also voiced support for the increased payments, including Missouri Senator Josh Hawley, who tweeted, "We've got the votes, let's vote today." Meanwhile, President Trump returned to his South Florida golf club Tuesday. On Twitter, he railed against weak and tired Republican leadership on the defense bill, and he repeated his call for $2,000 stimulus checks. Skylar Henry, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
Well, this evening, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin tweeted that electronic payments of the $600 stimulus checks will begin going out as soon as tonight. He added that the paper checks will be mailed starting tomorrow. Well, with the new federal stimulus package officially on its way, many Americans are getting more desperately needed financial support. But one group of small business owners is finally getting help for the first time. Q2's Casey Conlon shows us how it may save the future of live entertainment in our latest Rebound story.
The last time we checked in with the pub station was back in May. They had already been shut down for 2 months because of the pandemic, and figuring that financial help was on the way anytime. Well, it's been 7 months since then, and they still don't have any money in their accounts, but they will soon.
You know, what we accomplished nationally is what I read, at least in the New York Times, I believe it was the biggest public investment in art in history.
The Save Our Stages provision of the latest relief package will provide $15 billion for live entertainment venues like the pub station, independent movie theaters like Art House, and certain museums with show auditoriums. The SOS Group has been working on the bill for months, gathering 2.1 million emails to Congress, with some of the biggest names in music performing on empty stages across the country in support.
Hello, everybody. We're the Foo Fighters, and we're here at the legendary Troubadour.
We're a little big town. We're happy to be in Nashville, Tennessee at the Exit Inn.
My name is Mac Lamore, and this is it. This is our show.
Lynch has been on the front lines as a NEVA regional representative.
Learned a lot about the ins and outs of local and federal government, which is good. It was kind of a course in civics that crash course, I guess, in civics.
While far from the most populous group, Lynch says Montana actually was one of the leaders in getting the bill finally passed.
Both of our senators, Senator Daines and Tester, were some of the earliest co-sponsors of this bill. Both have been just extremely engaged in this process, and I couldn't be happier to be a Montanan, honestly.
That's not the only reason. Montana's smaller population will likely allow the state's venues to open slightly earlier than high-profile places, but don't be mistaken. We're nowhere close to that.
I wouldn't expect live entertainment to be coming back probably at a trickle, I would say maybe Q3, Q4, maybe a little bit of 2021. The really coming back to where everybody remembers it, probably 2022. So
that's what the Save Our Stages grant is aimed to do. Help these venues survive another turbulent year ahead.
And then after that, it's just hoping that this industry sees the demand again that it once did before the pandemic.
That's correct. Yeah, which we do think it will, but it's going to take a while for people to get comfortable.
And rebound to a pastime we all took for granted. Casey Conlon, MTN News.
Thanks, Casey. And Lynch hopes that grant applications will be available in the first 2 weeks of January, with money getting to venues by the end of the month. If you've driven by the old Lucky Foods on Grand and 17th in Billings, you've probably wondered what will take its place. And tonight we know the answer. Town and Country Foods, a Montana-based grocery chain that is employee-owned, will be putting a new store in that location and hopes to be up and running by June or July. I talked with company president Travis Franzen, who's excited about opening Town and Country's 7th Montana location here in Billings.
I describe us as a hybrid. You know, we do a lot of naturals, a lot of organics, a lot of local foods, but yet we still also do the conventional products that customers are looking for. Each store is different. You know, we don't have a cookie cutter where we say this is what we do and, you know, hopefully it works. Each store kind of changes and adapts to what the local community needs and is looking for.
Franzen says he expects the store will have 75 to 100 mostly full-time employees, and that hiring will probably begin in May and even before that for managers. On the COVID-19 front, Montana has seen 5 new COVID-related deaths since last night, bringing the state's total to 979. Those new deaths coming from Custer, Fallon, Richland, and Missoula counties. The total number of cases in our state grew by 376, with active cases over 5,000. The COVID-19 variant, first seen in the United Kingdom and some other countries a few weeks ago, has now reached America. According to our sister station in Denver, Colorado health officials have confirmed the first case of that variant in a man in his 20s. He had no travel history and is currently isolating. Scientists are trying to figure out whether that strain is more severe than prior strains of COVID-19, but initial research does not suggest that it may be, or does suggest, I should say, that it may be more contagious. All right, remember about 10 days ago, we thought we might see a white Christmas. Of course, that didn't happen.
No.
But we know where that snow went.
Yeah, last night we were watching the storm. It started in the Great Plains area in Four Corner states, moved through the Great Plains, and it wound up in Iowa. Take a look at this. This is what they were dealing with today. 5 to 8 inches of snow at Cedar Rapids. And, of course, a lot of it fell just overnight. And so, as you can see, a lot of people had to get out of their cars and start pushing them just to get them to go. Now, that one even had all-wheel drive. That's impressive there, huh? So that's what the problem was. You can see the snow on the roadways. It was just a mess there. 5 to 8 inches of snow, and it's still coming down tonight. This is a storm that could have hit Montana, but it just slipped underneath us. And boy, did we miss out on a big one, huh? How about that? Anyway, that's what's happening in the weather there, and now that storm will continue to make its way into the Midwest. And for us, we're looking at another storm getting ready to move in from the northwest, and that'll probably come close to us, but we still think that one may dive south, and we'll talk more about that coming up in a few more minutes.
All right, thank you, Bob. In 1960, the U-2 spy plane flew onto the world scene when American pilot Gary Powers was shot down over Russian airspace and captured. 2 years later, many Americans will recall that it was photographs taken from the U-2 that exposed the presence of Soviet missiles in Cuba, leading to the Cuban Missile Crisis. Well, tonight, MTN's Jay Cohn takes us into the cockpit of the famous U-2 spy plane that is still flying secret missions to this very day.
Fewer than 1,000 pilots have ever soloed at the controls of a U-2 plane. One of them lives outside of Livingston, Montana. Retired Air Force Colonel Ed Walby has logged more than 1,000 hours in the cockpit of a U-2, the plane nicknamed the Dragon Lady.
As you come down to land, you get within 10 feet of the runway, you're chased by another pilot. He calls out your altitudes. And when you get down to around 2 feet, you hope to have the airplane in a free stall. If you stall too high, the airplane drops and the airplane breaks in two, and you might get hurt. If you stall too low, it bounces, goes back up in the air, stalls again, and then the airplane drops and you break in two and you might get hurt. So it's difficult, plus you have the fishbowl on your head, the spacesuit. You've probably been flying 10, 12 hours, you're fatigued. Just all that stuff comes together, makes it really hard to fly. At altitude, it's easy, you got an autopilot, unless you lose the autopilot, and then you're in that coffin corner of 5 knots. Go too fast, you die, go too slow, you die.
But in spite of the inherent danger of flying a U-2, There's just something about flying at the edge of space.
When you're at 70,000 feet, you actually see the curvature of the Earth. This is either a sunrise or a sunset. There's a little piece of the moon showing. I actually saw Halley's Comet from altitude the last time it came through. Yeah, you can see the curvature of the Earth and the uniqueness of that sunrise. I think this is a sunrise. It's quite a neat place to be.
First proposed in 1953 under President Dwight Eisenhower, the U-2 was an immediate game changer in the international spy game. With a range of 7,000 miles and the ability to cruise at 70,000 feet, it could operate above the Soviet systems. To this day, the U-2 spy plane is considered the greatest intelligence breakthrough of the 20th century.
Folks that say, well, your cameras are so good you can actually read the license plate on a car, and I would tell them that's an exaggeration. From 70,000 feet, you don't have cameras that good that you could read the actual numbers on a license plate. What I can tell you is what kind of car it is, where it was manufactured, where it came from, where it's going, who's inside, who's male, who's female, what radio station they're listening to, how much gasoline's in the tank, how much oil's in the crankcase, and who they're communicating with if they're on a radio. But to say I could read the license plate would be an exaggeration.
Today, the modern version of the U-2 and its drone counterpart, the Global Hawk, are the front line of U.S. intelligence, involved in every major conflict and natural and man-made disasters since the mid-50s.
I flew over Rwanda during the slaughter of refugees during that conflict. We've been over Somalia. We've been over Mount St. Helens when it erupted. With Global Hawk and U-2, we took images of the reactors in Japan during the earthquake and the spread of radiation. We did the fires in California. We even searched for the Ark, Noah's Ark, using the radar and penetrating through the snow in Turkey. So some people say we found it, some people don't.
Colonel Walby retired to Montana several years ago. It was a homecoming of sorts, as he actually started his long Air Force career stationed at Minot Air Base in North Dakota. As you might expect, Colonel Walby has his share of harrowing moments in the cockpit of the U-2. Tomorrow he'll share some of those moments, including when he flew alongside the space shuttle in one of its first launches following the Challenger disaster. In Billings, I'm Jay Cohn reporting for MTN News.
Thanks, Jay. Look forward to that. Really an interesting story. Still ahead on the MTN 10 o'clock news here on Q2. From record unemployment to a roller coaster-like stock market and everything in between, we look back at the top business stories of 2020 after the break. And Bob McGuire will soon say goodbye to Q2 after 35 years on the air. We reflect on an event near and dear to his heart coming up in just a bit.